Welcome. It's great to have you all here with us. I've been doing a little bit of research and I've decided you can't believe everything you read on the internet. I know some of you are surprised, but you shouldn't be. I literally saw a quote once on the internet that had Abraham Lincoln and a black and white photo, and next to it, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, Abraham Lincoln. But this next one kind of really took the cake on inventions. I saw a photograph of what was purported to be the construction of the world's first camera. So think about that one for a minute. Yeah, you need to use a little bit of critical thinking when you're reading things on the internet, because some of those things just aren't really the real deal. Okay, a little bit of science news. So scientists at Colgate University have been using the James Webb Telescope to do some really interesting research on blue monster galaxies. And yes, I talked about this just so I could say blue monster galaxies because I thought it was neat. But they have a new theory about dark stars that they think could explain some of these blue monster galaxies. And if you want to know more about that, you'll have to research it because we can't get too deep into it. But it's pretty exciting what is being discovered with this incredible telescope all around the universe and beyond. Well, it's time to get it over to Dr. Joshua for how to study with Acellus Gold.
There are a lot of different ways to study with Acellus Gold. Some students study from home through programs like Acellus Academy, but a lot of students access Acellus in the classroom through their school district. And we recently heard an update from a school in California, the Acton Agua Dulce Unified, that shared some of their experiences with rolling Acellus out this school year. Let's take a look.
We're in a small rural area in Southern California. We have about 400 students at our high school, about 275 at our middle school, and about 320 at our elementary. So we've used about 6 different online platforms just in the last 10 years that I've worked with that district. Last year alone, at this first grading period, 60% of our students were successful at that time in passing their classes. At this last grading period with Acellus, 99% were passing. So we've seen huge progress. The other thing that we've seen as well is students excited about taking their online classes. We actually have a very, very large homeschool community within the area, and we've seen a lot of growth coming back into our district of students enrolling just because they heard that we have Acellus. Apparently it's kind of well known amongst the homeschool parent groups. So the second that they heard we had Acellus, we had kids coming in at registration signing up that day just because they knew we were adding it. So we just wanted to share some of the successes, and we're really excited about this program.
Congratulations.
Well, it's time to get it over to Dr. John for the Technology Spotlight.
Remember how computers used to use vacuum tubes? They look almost like light bulbs, and that would do the computing. And then we figured out how to make transistors, made it smaller, and then we figured out how to put all of those transistors on one little computer chip. Well, what do you think comes next after that? Take a look at this. This is a computer chip in a thread. It's a really interesting new technology that researchers in China have been working on. And it really looks like, just like fishing string or something. But if you look really carefully, you can see that there's more to it. It's actually got computer components inside of it. And they were inspired by sushi rolls, they said. But the idea is to be able to use a thread that's got all the computing technology in it in different things like smart clothes. Can you imagine having a special shirt that's got a display in the sleeve, you know? And you just look at your sleeve and different things like that. Maybe it would tell you, oh, time to wash me, right? Funny things like that might be useful, right? But in order to do this, they had to somehow get those transistors inside of the thread. And so they made a flat polymer, and they had to make it super flat, like less than a nanometer of roughness, which is, you know, nanometer is like a millionth of a millimeter, really, really flat. And then they used the same process that we use to make normal computer chips on top of that polymer. And then once they had it all ready, they rolled it up like a sushi roll, and that was the finished product. So if we take a closer look, you can see that it's rolled up, and this is showing the inside layers of the computer chip. In 1 millimeter of length, they can have 10,000 transistors with the die size that they were using. And so it would take about a meter, which is about 3 feet, of this to have a full-blown microprocessor like we have in our computers. And that's actually quite impressive when you realize how many millions of transistors are in a normal computer chip. But then, of course, the other special thing is that it's flexible. It's like a thread. So they can do strange things that you wouldn't normally do with a computer, like tie it in knots, right? Knotty things, right? And it can handle up to 30% of its length stretching, which is quite a bit. And they even tried driving a big truck over it, and it still worked. So it's pretty serious. And then they did things like twist it 180 degrees without ruining it, and then it can withstand up to 212 degrees boiling temperatures without getting ruined. And I guess the idea is it could survive going through the wash, you know, if it was a smart clothes. Of course, your phone could probably survive going through the wash, but don't try it, okay? And then once they have this, they can weave it into clothing, into textiles, and to be able to have that smart clothing. And they can put, of course, transistors and capacitors and resistors and things in there like we can in a normal chip. But they can also put diodes, LEDs, and they can put sensors, and they can also put power sources like little solar collectors and things like that. So they can have a whole computer in a thread. And it's really interesting to think about what you could do. So for example, one of their ideas is to have a glove, kind of like a VR glove, but you may have seen some of those. They're usually really bulky. Well, what if all of the electronics and the computer and everything were woven into the glove? And you can have sensors in there too, so it could actually be detecting and giving you the feedback all woven into that fabric, and it would look like a normal glove. It'd be pretty amazing, wouldn't it? Here's a little video of them looking at a piece of this under the microscope. So you got to get it positioned just right and zoom way in, and you can see all those little transistors rolled up in there. And then here's another video of them demonstrating how you can use it as a touch sensor and have LEDs in it as well. So they're just touching the thread and turning it on. And again, this is just a demonstration of the kind of thing it could do. So there are a lot of interesting applications with smart clothes and VR and stuff like that, but they also realized that with some of the new technologies of brain implants that they're working on for people who are paralyzed and things so they can communicate with the computer. Right now, they have threads that interface with the brain, and then they have a little computer chip they have to stick in there. But what if it was just a little teeny thread? The whole thing was a teeny thread. It'd be a lot less invasive. So it's kind of interesting to think about, but it might make some of those technologies that they're working on a lot nicer for people who need them. So I guess we'll follow this thread and see where it leads. And that's all the tech we have the time for. Thank you.
Now it's time for Breakthrough Moments in Science with Tobias.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about an interest, a passion a scientist had that ended up being a failure. Okay, now we need to talk about John Sullivan. Okay, now he's a scientist from Australia. And you know where I'm talking about, right? I love that. I think every time I say Australia, then it's going to have Australia, right? He was an Australian, right, engineer. You got to love their accent. It's just fun stuff. You know, the other day I accidentally sprayed myself in the mouth with Axe body spray. It was terrible because the rest of the day I talked with an accent. Deodorant jokes, they're another level. Yeah, the other day I went in on an elevator. There was this guy there. I was like, whoo, someone's deodorant isn't working. He was like, not mine. I don't use this stuff. Anyway, no. So let's come back. Where were we? We were in Australia. Right. John Sullivan. And in the 1970s, John Sullivan had a passion for black holes and studying them. Now, how do you study a black hole that's way out there in space and it's invisible, you could say? It kind of, you can maybe identify it by how you can't see other stars or something. So he's trying to figure out how to research it. And an idea he gets is, wow, there's these little tiny exploding particles, he theorizes, that are coming from the black hole. Could I pick up the radio frequencies, the electromagnetic waves from the black holes, from these tiny exploding particles? So he starts creating a system to do that, and there's so much distortion by the time those radio waves get to Earth, the electromagnetic waves, that he can't really decipher it. And he ends up making an experiment of a system that could take this distorted wave and fine-tune it and actually pull the signal out of it. And he works on this, and he tries to get it to where he can actually identify the wave from the black holes, and it ends up being kind of a failure, and he puts it away. So if you ever have a breakthrough and it doesn't work, don't give up. Thank you. Oh, wait. Page 2. Okay, there's more. So don't forget about John, okay? We're actually talking about Wi-Fi. Okay, now Wi-Fi, let's jump to the 1990s now. This is where laptops, and when I say laptop, they barely fit on your lap. So they kind of looked like they were some of these old laptops. And when you would have a laptop like this, it was cool because if it had a battery in it. Sometimes the battery was its own external thing that you plug in, but you could start to be portable. You could travel with a computer. And all of a sudden, people wanted to be mobile, but there's one problem. If you wanted to be connected to the internet, which was kind of this new growing thing, you still had to connect. You had to plug in like broadband or dial-up. And so a lot of technology companies started looking at how could we make a wireless internet system that your laptop could connect to. Now, we all know what that is, right? It's the Wi-Fi system that you have in your house probably. If you do a Cellus on your phone or your iPad or your laptop, you're probably connecting to it. And, that wireless system with, going through your house, you can almost think of it as a really fast two-way radio. In that phone or laptop that you have, that you use to access the internet, there's a little chip that can transmit and receive these signals. And then somewhere, probably in your house, is an access point that can transmit and receive. And they use electromagnetic waves to send and receive this data, this internet data, but it's very fast. And you can almost think of it like little Morse code signals that are being sent back and forth, but at like billions of times per second. So being able to send that much data that fast is incredible. Now, we have to look at this electromagnetic wavelength. And if you look at this, you can kind of see that rainbow circle where visible light is. Here's the Wi-Fi signal, that little red circle. And that's usually the frequency they use for Wi-Fi. We won't get too deep into it, is between 2.4 and 5 billion times a second, the wavelength, okay? And that's actually slow compared to some of the other speeds, okay? Now, our story starts with an American group called the American Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Let's just call it IEEE. That's an easier name. Well, this group got together in 1997 and they kind of agreed on some standards of like the frequencies we'll use. And so everyone's on the same page. We're gonna pursue this. This is the system we'll use. And basically the high frequencies we'll use for this data transmission. And they actually get a system in place, and different companies start creating test systems, and it becomes named the IEEE 802.11. That was the name of it. And it's like, do you have IEEE 802.11? I do have IEEE 802.11 in my, that's a long name. They hired a brand company, and they were like, okay, we need a better name. So can you come up with an official name for this? And they came up with Wi-Fi. It wasn't actually named after anything, but they came up with it. They needed something catchy. Someone probably went, we could name it Fi. Someone else probably, Wi-Fi. No, okay. But Wi-Fi became, and years later someone was like, did you guys name it that after wireless infidelity? And someone was like, yeah, I think that's why they did it. And then some people who were there at the beginning, they're like, no, it was nothing. We just named it that. But Wi-Fi. And still, though, there was a problem. There was a big problem. And that was when they started testing this wireless signal. Okay, so they have some kind of access point that's going to send out this wireless signal. You have your computer. It's going to receive it. Okay? When they would test it inside of a room or multiple rooms, the frequency would bounce off of all these different things and then finally get to you. And it was so chaotic when it would get to the receiving end, that your computer, that the computer couldn't read it. It was too garbled. And they had to send it, the data, really slowly, or else it couldn't make it out above all just the chaos. You can think of it like if you were in a really long train tunnel under a mountain, and I'm way down on one side and I'm trying to tell you something. If I maybe say hello, you can tell I'm saying hello. If I speak one word, but if I say, there's a train coming, you need to hurry and run off to the side, hurry quick, because you might just hear chaos by the time all that echoing gets to you. That's sort of what they were having. And so this was a huge problem. It could not work like they wanted it to until someone could figure out how to get this chaos to actually get to the laptop and have the laptop somehow figure out the actual data from all this chaos. So now we jump over to Australia, right, at Cicero. I almost said Cicero just because it's like kangaroo. But Australia, Cicero, this organization, they worked on all kinds of science things, and one of their projects was wireless. And who's there? John Sullivan. He's not doing the black hole research anymore. He's doing other stuff. It's years later. And he's working on this. Then he remembers his black hole projects from way back when. And he had worked on these special math equations, and they're called Fourier transforms. And basically, they could take these wavelengths, all this information, remember the static from these frequencies coming in from space, and actually pull apart the data and pull the signals out. And he takes his equations, and his idea is, let's try using this system I wanted to use for black holes. Let's put it into the wireless system, the receiving end. So they started doing tests, because up to that point, if you wanted to have a system that could actually receive the signal, you had to have like a room full of equipment, all this equipment to be able to decipher it. So they put his equations right into the logic of the little chip that would go into the computer to receive the Wi-Fi. And they had that chip, and through his equations being put into that, they were able to decipher through the chaos and actually extract the data. And all of a sudden, they had something that was usable. They could even do high speed for its time and be able to see and read the data. Now, nowadays, Wi-Fi is way faster than it was when they first got this going, but the speed at which they were able to get it was incredible for their time. And eventually this would grow and grow, and there's other breakthroughs, parts of this that, you know, are their own stories. But this ability to be able to take this garbled, distorted system of all this information and be able to pull it out was something that he had figured out years before, and finally got to put it to use to make a breakthrough happen. So if you have an idea, you even get the idea made, and then it's kind of a dud, maybe keep it safe and keep it, don't forget about it, and you might find that you changed something from wrong to right. Thank you.
Now I'm pleased to introduce the host of Science Live, Dr. Roger Billings, with co-host Paige Monet.
And there you are. Huh?
Here I am.
Well, welcome. It's an exciting day for science.
Yes.
You know, the idea behind Science Live is I want it to be the place where we make science fun. That's why we have her.
So is that
Yeah.
that's it, huh?
Yeah, some of you couldn't see this. The live audience could, but some of the people that were focused over on Tobias down in Australia,
Right.
they couldn't see. She went sneaking out.
I didn't.
Yeah, and the people here in the audience want to know, where'd you go?
Well, I was having a technology issue.
A technology issue. What was it?
My sensor was not connected to the phone, which wasn't connected to my watch, and I couldn't see what was going on.
Well, we were able to learn some technology that you missed out on.
About Wi-Fi?
Oh no,
No.
it was before that.
About the Australians?
You see, some of us really like to fish.
Like
And we
me.
learned that there's a new kind of fishing line
All that computer stuff.
that is very smart fishing line.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so, you can go out and sit on the lake in the boat, and the office calls and says, "Are you working?" You say, "Yeah, I'm working on the computer."
Some of your kids
It's pretty fun.
are imagining how thin screens are going to be and computers are going to be. And what did you imagine?
Well, just think about it. You're sitting there with your fishing pole with that smart fishing line. It's got a computer in the line, and the reel. That's the part you want it up on. The reel lights up and says, "Hi, this is your line speaking. The fish are back a little bit. Pull me in about 3 feet."
I love it.
And then there he said, "They're not biting on worms."
That would be really fun.
Yeah, I suggest dynamite. Anyway, well, it's good to have you here, and we have a really exciting session today because, as you know, we've been talking about radio, and radio was the technology from which a lot of things developed. And I was so privileged to be able to be mentored by Bill Lear, a guy who was mentored by the great Thomas Edison. But Bill Lear, very, very early in his life, became extremely interested in radio. And this was a time when every month there'd be some new invention come out, and it was just kind of evolving. So we got to see it all happen. He stayed right on top of it. And Bill Lear didn't get a lot of formal schooling, but he did go to a technical school. And at the technical school, the teacher was teaching them how to design a radio receiver. And they said, you've got to have a radio coil, and it's got to be yay size, a big thing. That's why the old radios used to be so big, because they had this big antenna in the front. And if you don't have that, you won't be able to pick up the waves. Well, Bill Lear said that's not true. And you see, you don't tell your teacher that it's not true. I mean, he found that out because, what do you mean it's not true? And he said, well, you could make a little tiny coil and it would work if you made it right. And teacher got huffy, Bill Lear got huffy, and he ended up getting expelled over that. And it really upset him. So he went home and he got a pencil and he made a radio coil on a pencil and hooked it up and made it work, took it back to the teacher. That, look at that. It's working, isn't it? And the teacher couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. There was something that was a common understanding at the time that made them think that that couldn't be done. But Bill Lear saw through it. And this teacher, far from being upset or offended, he said, you know, this has potential. And Bill Lear and that teacher ended up starting a company to build radios that were small enough to fit in the dash of your automobile.
That's
And they called their
amazing.
company Motor Radio.
So what would you call that attitude?
And later
that-
it was Motorola. See, did anyone notice how she's interrupting?
Oh yes, I went down to Motorola, which is amazing. So that attitude that Bill there had, would you call it stubborn, or would you call it
Well,
driven?
from a social emotional point of view, I'd have to ask the teacher, what would you call it?
Well, he mentored you, and I know that you have a drive, and
Are you saying I'm stubborn?
that's not the right
We're going to edit this part out. Cut this out, please. No. But it's interesting that if Bill Lear had learned to be a little more tactful, a little more social emotional training, he would have been able to achieve things that he wasn't able to. So learning how to control your attitude, your feelings, is good. But he was determined.
That's it.
And he was sure that he knew how to do it, and it
Yeah,
turned out he did.
that's it.
And so Motorola became a great company, and he became my mentor, and I'm very grateful to him. So he was designing radios, and then he'd go sell them to a company that wanted to make them. And when they first came out, everybody was trying to make them. So there were companies everywhere, and he'd design a new one. He said almost every day. But he wasn't able to pay the bills. And you know, it's one thing to know technologically how to do it. It's another thing to learn how to make it be a successful business. And that's when Thomas Edison stepped into his life and helped him learn how to make a business out of it. And that's how he became mentored, is making radios. So I'm all into radios. Before I met Bill Lear, and before I knew Thomas Edison, let's see.
Did you
Of course,
really?
he was gone before I came. But before all of that, I got involved in radio, first making a little tiny Foxhole radio where the tuner was a safety pin with a piece of pencil lead tied on with wire and a double-sided razor blade. And just really interesting things. And then later I got into radio. We're going to kind of finish up our talking today about radio. And I think you're going to really, really enjoy this finishing piece, okay?
Okay.
So the first thing I want to do, though, is I want to take you into Area 51 and introduce you to a very, very special person. There is a project that we're thinking about putting together and putting into the Gold Store for students. And I always like to kind of test these projects and see how much interest we get. A lot of the things that we voted on, we're actually doing. And it takes some time, effort, and money to put these things together, but we're doing them. So here's a new project. If you think this would be a good thing for us, then send your little message in, and let's roll the tape. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Area 51. I have a special guest today. This is Mark. He's one of the senior technical support people for Acellus. He helps schools that are using Acellus, but he's got an idea for a science fair project. Mark, tell us about it.
So this is a little radio, and it's actually a project I've been working on with R51.
Oh, no.
In Area 51.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of dangerous.
So it's a little radio that has a little speaker, and it has a little receiver and a little system where you can change the channel. And you can actually play different radio stations.
Does it really work?
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
works.
how many stations does it tune in?
It tunes into one. It's the
One station.
R51 station.
I see.
Yeah.
And how many channels does it have on that station?
There's a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate it for us?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Close it up here.
This is R51 Super Radio. Coming in, news bulletin. In news today, R51 had a Welcome to Radio 51, Social Emotional Channel, where today's special guest is the lovely Lady Paige Monet. Thank you very much for that introduction, R51. I thought you were really... This is Radio R51 Sports Channel, and here's today's scores. 12-13, 6-6, and my favorite, 21-7. This has been a great day in sports.
Let's try one more.
This is Radio R51 Weather Channel, and today the weather is, you're not going to believe this, it's outside, it's not in here. Oh, buddy, this is so funny.
So you need to work on your programming. You know, that's what you get. So this is R51 Radio.
Yep.
Now the idea is, this is an idea that you could pick up on for the science fair. Maybe you'd like to build a radio that can tune in R51 channel. And we're actually thinking that we could put these in the gold store if enough people are interested. If you would like to do one of these yourself, please send me a message right now, and if we have enough interest, we'll go ahead and put these in the store, okay?
Awesome.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thank you. You need to work on your programming.
Okay.
That is neat.
So, what do you think?
That is
what do you
neat.
think?
Yes.
Now this little radio does not receive radio waves from a station outside your house like other radios. This one actually receives the information by Wi-Fi, which we just learned about from Australia. And
Right.
Wi-Fi means that if we make these radios, you'd be able to receive R51 channel from everywhere.
Okay, that's fun.
Okay,
That's
so
really
come over the internet, go through your Wi-Fi, and this little thing would then pick it up. If you're interested, let me know by sending me a message. And are you interested in earning it with your gold credits as a finished product, or are you more interested in earning it as a science fair project where you actually have to put it together and solder yourself? So let us know that.
Okay.
A few weeks, now a couple months ago, I asked you how you'd feel about creating a course on flying helicopters.
And we got a lot of yeses.
Yeah, and we got a lot of yeses. So we are in the middle of filming that course. It's going to be a great one, and I'm really excited to offer that to you. It's going to be a few more months. It takes a while to film a whole course, especially to film it as good as we like to do it. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So remember where we've come on the radio story. We talked about how you were able to transmit radio wave and detect it. We talked about the coherer and all these different steps. Today, we're going to kind of do the climax. And I've asked the proteges if they would help on this. And I don't know. They said they would do it.
Did they?
Yeah, but then they came back and I said, so how'd it go? Did you do it? And they looked at each other, and they kind of
Oh.
And so, with a little bit of fear and trepidation, let's see what the proteges are up to.
Yar, Captain. We have received a query from yonder vessel.
What does it mean to tune a radio?
Yar! Make him walk.
Whoa.
We don't have access.
Oh, you're right. Could you have him clean the floor or something? Keep it down, buddy. Okay. What does it mean to tune a radio circuit, and why is it helpful?
If only you were born 200 years later, you might understand what that's saying. Where'd David go?
To understand this question, let's first set the stage. Today, wireless communication is all around us. Phones, Wi-Fi, radio, everywhere. But how did we get here? To understand that, let's go back about 200 years. Our story begins in 1874 with the birth of a boy named Guglielmo Marconi. Now, if you can't tell by the really bad accent, he was Italian. His mother was Irish, but his dad was a successful Italian landowner, so they were pretty well off. And growing up, the family would travel a lot, and Marconi ended up learning several languages during this time. Now, Marconi was also very interested from a young age in electronics and in physics. At the time, a new form of communication was sweeping across the world, Morse code. For the first time in human history, messages could travel miles in virtually no time. These messages were sent over wires using a code of dots and dashes that was created by Samuel Morse. While this was a huge improvement from traditional hand-delivered mail, there were still many limitations. Imagine you're on a ship lost at sea. Morse code was sent electronically over a wire, so without a wire to transmit the signal, there was no way to send or receive distress signals.
What's that voice? Perhaps we could generate sparks to send a message in Morse code across long distances wirelessly using radio waves.
I think we have enough waves.
But our story doesn't end there. You're back. I got you.
Thanks, bro.
Oh, I got you.
Thanks.
As you can see, this is a real problem, but it would all be changed one day in 1894. Marconi's at home one day when his mom brings home a magazine article. It's an obituary for a German physicist named Heinrich Hertz, who had tragically died at only 36 years old. The article described Hertz's experiments from a few years earlier. In one corner of his lab, he had a circuit, but it wasn't complete. At one point in the circuit, there was a small gap, but when he would crank up the voltage, a spark would jump across the gap, completing the circuit. But that's not even the weird part. On the other side of the room, he had another gap. No batteries, no connections, just air between them. But when there was a spark in the first circuit, there would also be a small spark in this other circuit. This would happen every time.
Hertz documented this strange effect, but wrote that he saw no practical use for it. However, when Marconi read this, a light bulb went off. He thought about the telegraph. Now, telegraphs were amazing, but you still needed wires. He thought, what if we could have a telegraph without the telegraph wires? What if he could use this strange effect that Hertz documented, which we now call radio?
Marconi gets right to work building in his attic. He builds a spark gap generator, he gets antennas, ground connection, all of this, but most importantly, a telegraph key to transmit these radio waves. 1 year later, at only 21 years old, Marconi sends the first wireless telegraph message. He transmitted it over a hill at his family's estate, and it traveled over a mile long.
The next year, he moved to England and worked with the British Post Office and military, setting up several different systems for transmitting Morse code. Now, he was able to get these systems to transmit about 5 miles. But when he tried to go much further than that, he started running into some problems, where the radio signal being generated wasn't strong enough to be picked up on the other end. Now, it was about this time that he heard about some research that was being done by another inventor named Nikola Tesla. Tesla was experimenting with similar spark gap generators, and he found that the typical spark gap generator that most people had been doing was pretty inefficient. It would transmit a whole bunch of different frequencies at the same time. Think of this like trying to have a conversation.
Wait, are those mountains?
But then people are in the room yelling.
Is that a penguin?
Tesla had found a way that we could isolate this. We could tune out those other frequencies, and we could just broadcast to a specific frequency. What that meant is the energy that we are putting into our transmitter is being used much more efficiently. So that means we can send a signal much further. But how did they do this? How did they tune these circuits? To understand this, let's take a look at this equation.
Which we're not going to get into today. We're running really low on time.
That's what I was going to say, actually. Basically, how they did this was using a coil. So they would put a coil in their transmitter, and depending on the number of winds in that coil, they could change what frequency they would broadcast at. So they would tune the transmitter, but then they would also need to tune the receiver to match this same frequency. And once they had that, they were able to transmit much further and much more efficiently. Using this technology, Marconi was able to set up several different systems in England, including one that broadcasted over the English Channel. But that wasn't enough for Marconi. He decided that the next step was to broadcast across the Atlantic Ocean.
Now, people had already sent communication across the Atlantic.
In the 1850s, the first transatlantic telegraph signal was made, not by wireless communication, but by the painstaking process of laying a massive cable in the ocean. After several failed attempts where cables snapped due to rough seas or technical mishaps, finally, in 1857, two ships, the USS Niagara from the American side and the HMS Agamemnon from the British, finally succeeded in laying the first working transatlantic telegraph cable.
Cable was laid and a signal was sent. And 3 weeks later, it was broken. That's why Marconi thought we should do this with radio. Now, at the time, it was considered impossible for radio waves to travel this far. The reason being, radio waves travel in straight lines, but the Earth is curved. So scientists believed that radio waves would shoot off into outer space. But Marconi persisted. He built a massive transmitter and several towers to receive this signal. They had everything built and ready to send. Now imagine you were Marconi. You spent all this time, you built this massive tuned transmitter that could transmit radio waves across the Atlantic Ocean. You built a series of towers to receive this signal. You're finally ready for that big moment. When wouldn't you know it, a storm hits and his tower is broken. Now, you could give up here, but Marconi persisted still. Marconi filled a balloon with hydrogen and attached a 400-foot cable of copper as his antenna. But the balloon failed. It kept falling from the sky. So instead, he tried a kite. After several failed attempts, on December 12, 1901, the first transatlantic wireless radio broadcast was received. And what was it? 3 dots. An S. What do you think that meant, an S? There's a lot of things that
we don't have time for that, actually. Now let's do an experiment where we build a simple radio receiver that can pick up local stations. To do this, I think we need the Inventioneer.
Inventioneers! Assemble.
We showed the Ventioneers our schematic.
Interesting.
All that was left to do now was to start building.
Hey guys, today we are unboxing the Averland Pivoting Toilet Paper Holder. You see that? You hear that sound?
Great job. Great job.
buddy.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Benjamin.
Thank you. All right. Now that we have that done, let's go try it out. So we went outside, we connected our ground cable, and then we ran our antenna. Next up, it was time to fire it up and see if we could find a signal. After some time searching, we finally found something. Here's a schematic of what we're doing. Now, the main thing I want you to pay attention to is this coil. Notice how we don't just have a regular coil, we have a piece of wire that can go over the top of the coil. This allows us to change how many winds are on the coil. If we have the wire here, you can see how that would make the coil shorter. But if we have the wire over here, now we have a longer coil. And again, that's how we're able to tune our circuit to decide what radio station we're listening to. Now this design is based off of a very simple radio design called a foxhole radio. So if you want to try building one yourself, you can actually Google that and find instructions just using household materials where you can put together a little radio. Using tuned circuits led to so many advancements in technology. We can now send wireless messages farther than ever before, and even ships out in the middle of the ocean could receive messages.
Yarr, Captain. A tuned radio transmitted this message to us wirelessly. There once was a ship that put to sea.
And the name of the ship was the Bully of Tea. The winds blew up her bow and down, and below my Billy boys low.
Is that a slow clap?
Science marches on.
Do you think that was really them singing? Do you think that Cody can sing like that?
It definitely sounded like it was really them singing. A little bit out of tune. Yeah, it was
I know
great.
he can sing like
Guys,
that. Guys,
I don't know. There's the Inventioneers right there.
Up there, they are.
Yeah. there they
Wave.
are. Hi, guys. Good job. I'm going to give you some career advice. Stay away from the proteges. Not really. That's just a joke, okay? It's just a joke.
They're becoming a hot thing, those
So
students.
radio and the coil, the original spark that created the radio wave, that created the remote spark, and I'm glad they went through that again, that proved that radio waves do exist and that they can carry energy from one place to another. But when they used just a spark to create a radio wave, it created a lot of radio waves. So eventually we had to learn how to tune them so that it'd just be one frequency. And today we have the whole spectrum, electromagnetic spectrum. Some of the bands are reserved for ham radio operators, some are reserved for military, some for police and emergency vehicles, some for broadcast and entertainment. And it's really important that the stations transmit only on their frequency. When I got my job as a radio announcer while I was a university student, my radio station was not what you call the biggest one in town. In fact, we came in number 3 out of 3. We were the smallest in town.
Wow.
And so in order for them to hire me to be an announcer, I had to study and pass a test and get a frog in my throat. No, and get a third-class radio engineer license to be able to take transmitter readings. And every hour, I'd have to go back to our little transmitter and take readings and check it to make sure we were not broadcasting with too much power, that we were broadcasting right on our frequency and only our frequency. And that's kind of a big deal. If you have multiple radio stations, if you overdrive or overmodulate, you'll get spurious radiation on all the other channels.
Oh.
Now, where that might be kind of fun, it's not, it's really frowned upon. One of my very best friends at that same time was working at the big radio station in town. We had one tower, we transmitted 1,000 watts. They had 2 towers, they transmitted 10,000 watts.
Oh, wow.
So they were the big station, we were the little one. And There's a thing called the Emergency Broadcast Network. And this is a network of radios that are triggered if a certain tone comes on. Some of you may have heard this tone. You're listening to the radio and say, we're now going to test the emergency broadcast system, and then you're, boo. Yeah, well, we would get that test every once in a while, and the idea was when that tone goes out, it turns on this little radio in the back of the control room, and that radio was tuned to the big station in town, which was tuned to the big station in the big town. It was a way that we could alert everybody at once that there was an emergency, okay? And I also, every hour, I had to go over and test the emergency radio, and I'd just turn it on, which means I'd listen to the big station. I'd turn it off. Well, we didn't really get some of the luxuries that some radio stations have. I mean, we did have a restroom, which I was very grateful for. But
long time to hold it, isn't it?
what we didn't have was we didn't have one of those teletype machines that would send you information like the news and like, you know, what's the weather and stuff like that. And if you don't give the weather, I mean, people are going to change stations because they want to know what the weather forecast is. And so my radio station call sign was KIXX, Kicks. And I had to give it the weather report. Ladies and gentlemen, today the weatherman is calling for partly cloudy skies.
Ooh, listen to that voice.
Well, I had to get the information to announce. So I go over to the emergency broadcast radio, turn on the other station, because I knew exactly 15 minutes after the hour, they would always give the weather. So then I come back over and I'd say, today the weatherman is calling for partly cloudy skies with temperatures in the mid-30s. And I thought that was a pretty clever thing to do. But the real joke came out later, because one night I was hanging out with my friend, the disc jockey at the other place, and we were always kind of friendly competition about which station's best. And I said, I have to tell you something. I'm embarrassed to tell it, but it's so funny. I just have to tell you. He said, what is it? And I said, guess how we get our weather forecast? He said, how? How do you do it? And I said, I tune in your radio and I still it, and then I broadcast it on ours. And he just almost went white, like, oh my goodness. And I thought, what? And he said, we get ours by listening to you. And that's why sometimes when you listen to our radio station say, and we have sunny skies today, while it's snowing. Yeah, anyway. But it's fun. Radio is fun. And this thing about the little radio kit, I want you to be sure and let me know if you think that's something you'd be interested in, because I think we might do it.
Interruption.
But R51, you know, he is making his own radio. Excuse me.
They are letting you know. They want it so they can get it with their coins and so they can make it.
Okay, they want to make it themselves.
Both.
All right, good.
Lots
well,
of
it'd be a fun
interest.
project, and
Yeah.
I will look into that. Have we got enough to say there's real interest?
Yes.
Okay, good.
A lot.
Well, now part of the idea on this radio is you have to have a station to listen to, and as you heard, Mark was working with R51, and he's got these great ideas on radio. And I was telling him that this week we're going to explain how you tune a radio. And you remember we saw that radio coil, and by changing the number of winds, you can tune the frequency. When you get into a little more sophisticated radio, you create what scientists call a resonant circuit between the coil and some kind of an inductor and capacitance, and you can actually quite accurately tune those. One of the things I had to learn to get my radio engineer's license so I could be a disc jockey was how to make an oscillator oscillate at a certain frequency. And I'd just like to say, the way they do that is ingenious. Sometimes they do it with a crystal oscillator. My favorite way was a Colpitts oscillator. And if
Colpitts?
Yeah. Look it up if you want to build one, and then try to understand it because they're really quite ingenious. But we only have a few minutes, so let's just check in and see what R51 has to say about tuned radios.
Oh, well, hello, everybody. This is R51. And guess what? I made all this gold from my newest invention. It's called R51 Super Radio, and it is the most fun radio you can imagine. And I'm going to show you today how radios really work. It's pretty amazing because radios, they send sound, and sound goes, and it goes in straight lines and circles. You get that? You know, like circles with straight lines. And so this is a radio right here, and I'm going to show you how it works, because when you're right there, you can hear it, but when you're not right there, you can't. And I've asked the very lovely lady, Paige Monique, if she would help us today. She's going to talk and say some nice things, and we're going to turn this around, and you're going to find out when we're pointing right at her and tune her right in, then we can really hear what she says. Okay, are you ready, Lady Paige? Okay, here we go. Listen.
For happiness. And what is happiness? Happiness to some person is different than happiness.
Let's try it again.
Ultimately, when you really find that real feeling of joy, when you find that real
Wasn't that amazing? And do you know what? I'm going to tell you a little secret. I think she likes me. Because I invented super radio. Hello, is this artificial intelligence?
Yes, how can I help you, R51?
Oh, this is R51. I'm super intelligence, and I have a few questions. You see, do you know who Lady Paige is?
Lady Paige Monet is a power influencer and a SELAS instructor.
Yeah, that's the one. She's my teacher, too. In fact, I'm her favorite student. Yeah, and I want to do something really special for her. Can you please tell me, what does Lady Paige really like?
She has expressed a love of nature and the earth, often incorporating butterflies into her fashion and branding.
Well, don't you see that it's winter and all the butterflies? I can't find them. Do you know where the butterflies went for the winter?
You won't see butterflies in cold winters. They migrate, hibernate, or die after laying eggs.
That's so sad. That's so sad. What am I going to do? How can I make Lady Paige like me? I know. I will get her some winter butterflies. Some winter butterflies.
Are you happy?
I love it.
Yeah.
Winter butterflies. I like winter butterflies a lot.
I think you've really inspired that guy.
Is he a guy?
I'm not sure. Anyway.
I've inspired him, though. Huh?
Well, thank you very much for sharing today with us. I hope you've enjoyed everything today. I have.
It's
I
been
thought
really
the
fun.
Inventioneers were amazing, and it was smart of the proteges to take credit. And R51 is R51. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.